Hello, everyone, and welcome to another inking stream. Let me just the camera a little bit so I don't have too many shadows. Yeah, there we go. So last time we were working on Miles a couple weeks ago, we did Miles J is for jury duty. And of course, we did have, doesn't show as much here, but we do have the three little thought bubbles. So what's going on in Miles's brain? Well, we are gonna ink that tonight. Might not show up super well, but we do have our non-photo blue pencil underdrawn there. And we are gonna start roughly top, working our way down. We're using it's just standard cheap old well, the nibs, some of the nibs I've had for ages and got from like Opus Art Supplies in Vancouver, but I think they're basically the same as what you would get at Michael's in your standard dip pen um, kit. I think Speedball makes. And we are using Speedball. I'm not going to tip this back because this is open now, but Speedball Super Black India ink. So this cartoon is a spread from. I will come back and probably add wood grain in this little bit. It's going to be in the gutter of the book, so you won't see too much, but I will do that afterwards, lining the two up, just like we have part of someone's face. I do have outline. It probably doesn't really show, but I figured out the math for the size my pages need to be, which off the top of my head, I want to say 5.5 by 8.5, but I could be wrong there. I did all that math quite a while ago, and I just kind of refer to just the numbers, but it will be about, I think, 30. I think it's drawn about 30% bigger than it's actually gonna be. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of a kind of a starbursty action indicator, thumping whatever, these kind of things that you see in quite a lot of cartoons for indication of action or whatever. Um, I'm going to do this with my big fat nib before we switch over to a narrower nib for details in Miles's face and the judge's face and whatnot. Um, what was I starting to say? So this spread, I'm working on a book. It was originally um, inspired by a guy who goes by Struthless. Forget what his real name is, but he's an Aussie arts and he's sort of productivity as well, but primarily arts illustration YouTuber. And a while back, he had this alphabet superset challenge that he proposed, which is whatever kind of art you do, you would pick a project and then you would pick an overarching theme. Um, and then each week for a year, you would find like a sub theme or topic or whatever, but like kind of a fractal thing. And each of those would start with the letter of the alphabet, right? Um, do you say, well, I guess actually you could do it um, in 26 weeks, 27 weeks, obviously, because um, there's only the 26 letters, or you could take like 2 weeks on A and whatever. So, anyways, at that time was when I was first sort of brainstorming this guy, Myles, who, if you dig on my channel, there's a sketchbook tour called the Bono Mouse Sketchbook. Um, and that was a project that I did where I didn't have, at the time, I didn't have access to a life drawing thing, but I was in some YouTube fan groups, and you get some of the middle-aged ladies who've been obsessed with Bono since they were teenagers, sharing photos of Bono and all stages of his life, and then live photos, candid photos, post promotional pics, all that sort of stuff. So I had access to all these photos because it was coming across my Facebook feed. But I didn't initially want to start filling sketchbooks with drawings of rock stars because that seemed very juvenile, and I was already in my 40s. But anyways, somehow I think it was because of the CEO change up at Disney with Bob Iger coming back and Bob Chapek getting fired, or was he fired? Did he resign? I don't remember now. I think he was fired by the board. But anyways, there's a lot of news about this on some of the channels I was watching at the time. So somehow, some way, my brain put that together and said, "Why don't you do a you could do the sketchbook as a Bono Mickey Mouse kind of mashup." I know, it doesn't make any sense to me either, but that's just how it was, what I did. So, anyways, that evolved into that sketchbook, and there's a tour. I take you through the whole thing. It's like 45 minutes long, so but I started doing these little cartoons of random mouse guys who kind of sort of looked vaguely Bono-ish, but they weren't Bono in the margins, and some of them started to become their own dude, and that's evolved into Myles. And anyways, I had known at the time that the alphabet superset thing was happening. I knew I wanted to do some sort of a project with these. I called them the marginal mouse men or mice men, um, but I didn't quite know what. So I saw the Struthless thing where he was talking about this project. I'm like, well, I could use that for brainstorming. So, what it ended up being, I came up with Miles's name, um, and whatnot, and then his personality. I had some sense because of the drawings in there. The marginal mouse men were always trying to like steal the cheese from the bigger Bono mouse drawings. I know it's all very. I say it out loud. I'm like, this sounds insane. Well, creativity kind of goes that way sometimes. But anyway, so I knew that the little dude was kind of a greedy little shit because of how he was in the sketchbook and whatnot. But a lot of the other stuff I didn't know. I kind of discovered in this. So for every letter, I have this spread in the book, and I'm just kind of going through the alphabet. So I go and kind of brainstorm words and then pick ones that seem to go together. So for A, the left side, he's in an art gallery looking at abstract art, and he doesn't look too happy. And then he's kind of thinking that he should have gone to the arcade instead. So the right hand side of the page, he's playing Cheese Man, and there's like tokens, and I guess he's kind of also doing something that would be kind of like Dance Dance Revolution or whatever. But different shots of Miles in the arcade. What he should have done, he would have had more fun if he had done it. But anyways, so it kind of evolved from there. Like the E spread is how I discovered that Miles is a part-time Elvis impersonator, because I wasn't anticipating that, but it's like, oh, E for Elvis. And anyways, so that's how we got here. Um, and I kind of had set it aside for a while because I was working on Ricky B. Rat stuff, and my main project is my web comic Noah's Archipelago, which sucks a lot more of my time than I necessarily schedule for it. Because I always go like, well, I know I can do a Noah comic in as little as an hour and 15 minutes from start to finish. I'm like, yeah, but that's not very normal. Usually it's like 3 hours. Anyways. Um, Miles had kind of gotten set aside, and then at some point, initially he was separate from Ricky B. Rat, but then I kind of realized it would be weird to have a Mouse Man cartoon and then separately have a Rat Dude cartoon. At some point they're going to go together. Um, Mice and rats don't really get along, which is part of the personality issues with these guys. I think I'm probably gonna no, I'm gonna do his shoes first, and then I'm gonna move to the back to the bigger black nib so that I can do the judge's robes. Yeah, good old wingtips. Ended up having to do brainstorming and research on a whole bunch of things I wouldn't have anticipated otherwise because Miles, he's kind of a businessy kind of a dude. Um, so I have one of my sketchbooks, which I think I did the tour of that book already. It's like the gray, I think it's gray car and class sketchbook or whatever. There's a tour somewhere else on my channel, but where I was like looking up men's dress shoes and kind of doing little drawings, and that's all. The only character I have that would be wearing that stuff would be Miles. So, but there you go, some little brogued wingtips for the judge. And I'm just gonna run out the ink that I have on the bottom here, and then we're gonna go to that bigger nib again. And- Well, it's J, so Miles is doing a jujitsu judo sort of a flip of the judge. Why? Well, because the judge won't shut up. Also, the case is taking too long. Miles gets this jury duty summons, didn't manage to get out of it. And, you know, Miles is an accountant and tax season's coming up. This whole jury duty thing better get done quick because it's starting to interfere with Miles's business. Miles is the only guy who would be singing "It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year" in April. And it is, because for him, he's charging 98 bucks per tax return. Now it's time to move on to the other nib. These ones that are kind of open, I always find that the ink only goes to like there, even though this little keyhole shape, it's supposed to have the surface tension, have the ink go all up there, so it holds. Maybe it depends on the ink you're using or whatnot. I never have any luck with that. It never works. So, um, oh, now it's not going to come out. It got stuck right in there. Um, anyways, that's why I kind of like these other nibs that have like the little brass thingy. They sort of, that's probably not going to focus too well. I don't think so. But the ink gets in under there and sort of stays better, I find. So usually that's what I kind of go for. But anyways, back to the fat one for the robe. I got some knock off a little. They're all just dried ink bits that aren't going to damage anything. But there we go. I'm just going to block this in. I'll come around and like clean up the lines afterwards. But let's be realistic. When it comes time to actually do this book, um, I'll be scanning everything and then fixing my boo-boos in Photoshop. But, the majority of the work for this is being done the old-fashioned way. And that kind of also goes with that original sketchbook thing, because the reason why I did it was I was working on Noah's Archipelago already, but because Noah is a digital cartoon, I would kind of be working on it for a few hours and then close my iPad and be like, I feel like I haven't done anything artistic today. I don't know. It's just how the brain works. Excuse me while I try to subtly blow my nose off camera. Um, so that sketchbook was kind of a way of getting back to um, non-digital. Where is the judge's other arm? We'll assume he's somehow managing to levitate it straight down his. I did use a some sort of a pose reference of like judo. I think it was actually judo throws, not jujitsu, but close enough. Um, and you couldn't see the other arm, but anyways, with this book, once the drawings are done, then I think what I'm gonna do. I came up with this idea, I think last year, because I've been working on this since like 2003. But I think what I'm gonna do then is do a bit of a parody of, like kids' books where it's like A is for, A is for apple. You'd rather have chocolate. Anyways, do a bit of a parody like that where it's um like there's a narrator talking about what Miles is up to and Miles's bad behavior and stuff. And perhaps at the end, Miles tracks down the narrator and also does some jujitsu on them. Who knows, right? But so then you would have like a page that has this little written bit, and then you flip the page, and then you got the next illustration and all that. That's kind of the rough idea. I don't even know if this particular robe makes sense, but you know, without actually like grabbing a judge and doing a judo flip and filming it from multiple angles, I wouldn't actually know how the judge's robe is going to behave. Maybe it flies straight up. This almost looks like it's drooping down still, which I guess that means momentum. Who knows? He's levitating. We'll just call it like that. Um, yeah, got some ink under there that I want to use up. So we'll put a bit of the ground in. We'll probably fatten those lines up at the very end afterwards. And when I'm going off screen, I have like little containers with water and whatnot. I actually have to. My dad is one of those guys who, instead of like Tupperware, he like reuses like sour cream containers and stuff. And he has a cabinet that's absolutely full of them. But I think I'm gonna next time I'm over there, um, ask to borrow, i.e., swipe a couple for that because I've got my big water container is one of his sour cream ones. But then I've got a like French onion chip dip one, which is it's nice and wide, so it's stable, but it's also very shallow, a little too shallow. The sour cream is too deep, and then the one I just showed you is like I don't know pudding or something. And honestly, they're a little tippy because the base is smaller than the top, and they are kind of relatively speaking tall. So I get some big fat. I thought I had some short sour cream containers for water, but I don't know. I lost them. They accidentally found their way into the recycling bin or something. I don't know. Uh, so, like I said, I'll have to go raid Dad's kitchen. Now, let's go back to our to this one. And now it doesn't want to go in all the way. I think there's got to be some like dried ink on down the because there's a little. I probably won't show on the camera, but you can sort of see the little circle. And I think sometimes ink gets in there and dries, and that's why like one side this nib will go all the way in, and the other side it won't. I don't know. I've probably had this pen base for. Oh, no, is this the one I used to use on Zombie the Destroyer? I think this might be. I've got a couple different ones. But you know, 20 years ago, I was doing a web comic called Zommel the Destroyer, and often it was done the same method with dip pens. Later on, I think I started using fine liner markers just because it was so much faster. Uh, yeah. Anyways, I'll clean up his whiskers in Photoshop later. I'm trying to get the one thing I do want to work on more is like folds in jackets and clothing and whatnot, but you kind of want to go around the form, right? So obviously his arm is round and that's his elbow, so there's going to be fabric folds there. Um, Frankly, his arm's a little too fat here, but whatever. Yeah, I think I'll add some motion lines. No, Miles could definitely, if if the bailiff comes to get him over this, Miles could always say, "Well, hey, technically speaking, the cartoon, my hands aren't on the judge. You can't see them. Well, you can't see one of them. Um, Perhaps the judge just happened to slip on a banana peel, but that would have been in B, right? Not under J. I'm sure Miles's lawyer will come up with something, right? Anyways, don't worry. Miles's dad is the most in used car czar and has a lot of power and wealth and influence. So, Miles gets away with all sorts of shit that he really shouldn't. I don't know if that's going to read properly, but I'm envisioning the judge is kind of an older dude and he's got hair in his ears, but not much on the top of his head. Kind of bushy eyebrows. Like three hairs on the top of his head, Homer Simpson style. Miles is upper class, and you know this because he sticks his pinky out when he flips the judge. Now, should I finish his feet now? I think I'm going to go back and do wood grain up in the top corner because this needs to match up with here. Um, just because if I finish this off, then I'm going to be dragging my arm across. Whereas right now, this is all pretty much dry. There's just a couple spots I have to be mindful of. So we're just going to, at least I'm not going to be spending an hour on wood grain. Last time I worked on that, I think the video was like an hour and a half, and like easily an hour of that was just wood grain. It is what it is. Actually, I have to remember. I've got. I'll hold this up. Maybe that kind of shows with the little outline. That's like these pages will be printed full bleed. Um, so which I have to remember. That means I do need to go to the edge. But I expect that what's on the outside of these 5 millimeters is actually going to be cut off by the printing. So like the little face there is kind of matching up with her. Um, but really, she's not going to be in the book at all because of where she is located in the middle. I was designing my the graphic novel, the other graphic novel, one of the other ones I'm working on now, Ricky B. the Rock and Roll Rat. Um, what I decided to do actually was rather than try and figure out bleed and stuff because there's a lot of dialogue that's all um, on the pages, so like hand drawn lettering. I was like, well, you know what? Every page in the book is just going to have a big black outline, and the black outline will be the bleed, but then the actual comic is inside, so it doesn't get cut off. But wouldn't do that on everything. And there's still pages without the border in Ricky B Goes to Sea. So she's wearing a white top. Okay. And some other jurors' ear, hair, and shoulder. We'll give her a dark top, which I think, yeah, that is correct. And then here we're into the edge of the jury box, so a bit more wood grain. And again, most of this is going to kind of disappear into the gutter of the book, but yeah, that's going to be vertical grain. Actually, there's, oops, no one's going to notice that. I won't tell if you don't. I forgot that there's panels on that jury box. And then the ground is just similar to the judge's thing. Okay. So now I will go and finish Miles's shoes because then we're gonna go back to the fat nib. So for whatever reason I drew Miles as having round cap toe shoes. I would kind of envision him as being more of a slightly pointy shoes kind of guy, but gives the illusion of length. Miles is a little sensitive about his height. Miles is half rat, half mouse. Um, his mother is a rat. His dad is a mouse. But he was raised by his dad. Because if you think about the size differential between rats and mice, if he was raised by his dad over in Mouston, then Miles is going to be the big bully. He was raised by his mom in Ratsville. Well, now Miles is the little shrimp who's getting the snot beaten out of him every day and having to hand over his lunch money. So, it was decided that it was best for Miles to have him be raised by his dad. Well, probably more his grandma, but. And then Miles ended up going to boarding schools and stuff like that, country clubs. So, he's that kind of a dude. So back to that. Just realized I forgot wood paneling texture over there. We'll deal with that after. There's always something you forget until the last minute. Let's give them a little bit more in the terms of shadows, eh? I guess on my last stream, I gotta break out the pen cleaner and tidy these nibs up a little bit. Some of them are definitely kind of clogged. Maybe I'll get that done in advance of Friday's live stream. Friday's live stream, we've been working on inking the last few bonus cartoons for the first anthology for my webcomic Noah's Archipelago. I think I've got 4 more to do, but probably I'm only going to do 2 more live streams with that because I'd kind of like to get them, you know, usually time wise, I just get 1 done per stream, and I'd like to have the book done a little sooner than a month. So, yeah, I got our shadow, but I don't want it to look too stripy on the ground, so I'm just gonna add a little more darkness to the ground in general. And give a little more depth too. I think these motion lines kind of do need to be a little beefed up too. There we go. And now we continue outlining the thought bubble. There we go. Still a lot of ink in that nib, but I think we is done with it. And back we go to this nib. If I can get it in. Because, yeah, I forgot the rest of our wood grain up there. Oh, you know what I just noticed? I forgot to go all the way to the top on that. So we're gonna fix that on that other one, I think, once we finish this one. Got time. And the thing is that it's probably gonna get cut off and not show, but if they, so I'm gonna be doing this book with print on demand on Amazon. So, like, it's one of those things where if it's the, lining up is just a tad off, you kinda want it to go all the way off the edge of the page, so you're not worried about, like, "Oh, what if," uh, "What if I end up with this white stripe at the edge of my page?" You know what I mean? Oh, yeah, that would help if I'm sorry. Fortunately, there wasn't all that much up there, but I guess there was more than 0. Uh, I'm just adding that. Still getting used to the whole live streaming thing. Did some streams vertically, and then I was hearing that, "Oh, you really shouldn't, do vertical live streams. They don't really whatever," and, um, so I'm currently using a document camera and a wireless lav mic. And I am streaming from my MacBook in case anyone cares. But there you have it. Could fatten up the outlines or the lines between the boards, but honestly, because it's so close to the edge, I don't think I'm going to worry about it. It shows more over on these two longer ones, and um, this side will also kind of be a little more obvious because we're going to go decline, cuts off, little there, little there, and there. And similarly, this is almost certainly going to get chopped in the printing process, but I also have to sort of go. Yeah. Well, with kind of the jury box come out here and then go back there. So, anyways, I'm going to do that for the edge. Maybe that way, and then have kind of like a baseboard or whatever. And I will kind of do a little, kind of pick up this texture, but super light going back just to give it more depth. Because the further back you go, the smaller things would be and lighter, maybe. not have a really defined horizon line, but it just kind of at some point it fades out. I'm gonna come back in um, with the fat nib, anyways. So we'll do that. And is the judge wearing white shoes? Why not? Let's say that the judge is wearing white shoes. Um, Pants a little bit darker though. You know what? I think I'm gonna make the judge be wearing saddle shoes. So you will lose kind of the brogaine dot detail, but whatever. You know, let's fix what I missed last time. So just for ease, I'm gonna flip this guy upside down. And we'll just continue the wood grain over that. Again, this is almost certainly going to get cut off the printing because this is part of the trim area, but just in case, we're gonna make sure it's fully textured. It doesn't take much. I think the in-between lines between these panels, I think we're done with a slightly fatter nib. So I just gotta go over them a couple times with this one, but you can make it work. I probably shouldn't be putting my finger right where it's wet ink, but it's also getting kind of dry out right now. All right, back to the big fat nib. As I swish the worst of the ink out of this guy. That is not wanting to come out. So we're going to call that good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect over the edge, but just enough that that you don't end up with like a white line if they trim it wrong. So there for a moment, and it's back. And now we'll kind of come back because some of these weren't going quite all the way to the edge of the little thought bubble, which is one way you could do it, where if you have like a white outline within the outline, but that wasn't kind of wasn't what I was thinking of doing. Now, it may end up actually when I look at it on camera, it looks a lot more um, distinct in the outline. But that is one way that you could do it. Would be to basically have like that, and then purposefully always keep some sort of a buffer. But we so far haven't been doing that, so we shan't be starting it now because then I'd have to go and erase a lot of stuff. When I bring this into Photoshop to clean it up, I'll probably put a little white halo around the motion marks, though. Now, uh, kinda not super stoked on the this stuff now. I liked it at the beginning. Not crazy about it now. Worst case scenario, what I can always do, and I'll think about this later, would be to basically kind of trace the outline of the thought bubble and trace the outline of Miles and the judge, transfer that to a new, or actually, yeah, I'll just use my light box, put that outline on a new piece of Bristol board, and then I can kind of ink a new background and then put them together in Photoshop. But um, excuse me, I am sorry. Super loud into when I'm wearing a lav mic, like 6 inches away from my throat, and I sneeze. Um, but I think we were going to call that done for the day. We're coming in just about an hour, so not bad. So, can I try to see if I can get them both in? Yeah, sort of, kind of. But this is the basic of what that spread's going to look like. Now, she has 3 eyes right now, but keep in mind one of those is the trim, so it's actually going to go more like that. Right. And then obviously we got the little bit at the bottom, but that's just the prosecutor. It don't matter. So yeah, that is what we've got. And that's going to be today's live stream. So again, this is my name's Pyra Draculea. I guess I should say that. I mean, it's on my channel thing, but not everyone's going to be seeing this from my channel. But yeah, we've got Myles. The book is called Myles Maarav's Pursuit of Happiness. Oh, it would help. Like pointing at stuff I moved off camera. Myles in jury duty. The book is called Myles Maarav's Pursuit of Happiness. At least that's the working title. He ain't happy here in jury duty, but he thinks he'd be happy if you flip the judge. I don't know if he'd be happy with the amount, with the however long, few weeks in county jail that he might earn from doing something like that. But he's just thinking about it. He's not actually doing it yet. Anyways, so I keep having things a little too far out, but there we go. That is the J spread for that book. And there we go. All right. Well, hope you've enjoyed the stream. And we will be streaming again tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific. For that won't be an inking stream. That'll be one of my marker brainstorming streams. Well, stream scheme kind of the same in this case for brainstorming, where I'll be doing Myles's cousin, baby's boyfriend, Ricky, and Ursula from Noah's Archipelago on the path to Cheesy Rats, which is a Chuck E. Cheese knockoff. Anyways, we'll see you again for another stream real soon. Bye for now.